everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm going to be making a daisy headdress, a little bit like this one here, and I thought it would be a good idea to sort of film how I'm putting it all together. So this isn't going to be a how to felt in the templates. This is just going to be a how to construct the headdress. With regards to the templates, this is the daisy and the circle from the Dainty Daisy Template set, and that's available over on the website. The tutorial for how to felt the various components from that set are also on the channel on the Dainty Daisy tutorial. So to create these, check out that tutorial first. What you're going to need to make this gorgeous little headdress, I have a selection of wires. This is a 20 gauge and these are 26 gauge. So we've got some really quite thick ones and some quite fine ones. You're going to need some pliers and some wire cutters, a tape measure. You're going to need some florist tape. You're probably going to need an awl, and you're going to need some ribbon to decorate the back. Then you're going to need your felting surface and some needles. What I'm going to do is, although I would make the headdress with green wires, because I've got a green background here, I've got some white wires, so I'm going to make my headdress out of those wires. Pretty much everything you see here is available on the Mum's Makery shop. We now stock various gauges of florist wire and florist tape. Okay, so with tools and equipment covered, we're going to carry on and start making the little daisy headdress. When starting to create the headdress, the first thing you will need to do is measure the circumference of the head that it's going to be for. If you're making these generically, somebody told me that the average size of a person's head is about 22 inches. I don't know how true that is. She assured me she was a costume maker and had done and measured many heads, so 22 inches probably a safe bet. That's what this one is. This one is 22, and if you can see at the back here, let me get a focus on this one, I've got it looped round, so we've got a little bit extra, and because this kind of hooks round on itself, there we go, you've got some adjustment there as well. So you can extend this or reduce it slightly. So it gives a little bit of versatility with the measurements as well. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you have a look at the Dainty Daisy tutorial, that will show you how to create these particular parts. You then need to decide how many of the daisies you're going to have on your headdress. I'm going to go with 5 for this one. There is 6 on this one, but for this tutorial I'm going to do one with 5. So what I've done is I've made 5 of the daisies and 5 of the centres. What I'm now going to do is wire up the daisies so that they can be easily incorporated onto the circlet, and then attach the centres onto the daisies. So for that we're going to need the 26 gauge wires. For those who are interested, this wool is our white, and our white is an actual white, and this is the bright yellow. So once you've made your daisies, what you're going to do is grab one of the 26 gauge wires and just cut them in half. We're only going to need half a wire per daisy head. You may be able to cut an acute angle on the wire and feed it through. I'm just going to use an awl. I'm just going to put a couple of holes right in the centre. Feed my wire through. And then feed my wire through. And then pull it up to the end. That's going to lock this onto that wire. Then a nice tight twist. And there you've got your little daisy. You can have them very, very tight if you don't want them to move. I like a little bit of movement in the daisies, just so when it's on a head that, you know, it can be positioned. Okay, so once you've got all of your sort of daisy heads wired up, then grab your centres, and all we're going to do to attach the centre is hook in right at the very edge, going in on quite an angle, and we're more catching. Let's see if I can zoom in a little more. Just catching those fibres, and you are sort of driving them out the back. So work all around your daisy centre. And when you're driving, remember to lift from your surface. There we go. So I've got my daisy head now nicely attached. And you're going to go through and do that for however many daisies you're going to have around your circlet. I have my 5 daisies all wired up and ready, and a couple of the centres were a bit too bulbous, so I've kind of gone over the top as well, just to flatten them out ever so slightly. It's probably worth pointing out that I haven't ironed these daisies. I actually want them to be a little chunkier, so I haven't ironed them. If you were going to iron them and then sort of just trim off your little wild hairs, then you would iron them before you put the wire in and before you put the yellow centre on. So if you wanted to do that, that's when you would do that, then wire them and add the centres as I've done. So there's the 5. Next, what we're going to do is create the actual circle of wire. What I've got laid out in front of me is my tape measure, and what I found is the florist wires you can't get it out of 2, you need 3. As I mentioned before, I'm going to use these white florist wires, mainly because if I use the green ones, you won't see it on my green background. But we're going to go with a headdress which has a circle of 22 inches, and then we're going to need a little bit to create that sort of loop at the back for adjustment. So I'm going to make it to 25 inches, and then that's going to give me sort of 1.5 inches of turn back on each end. So what I do is I get my first wire and I put it about middle, and then my second wire I move out so that the end is at 25, and then this is the sort of overlap that we've got. I have to move this out of the way to pick it up, but all you do for this is just twist them together. I work from the middle, go up to the end of one wire, and then up to the end of the other, and it just creates that sort of loop, that twisted sort of centre. This is all going to be covered in florist tape, so what we're doing now is just creating the base structure. So I'm going to pop this back down with the end at 25. I'm going to get my other one and put that with the other end down at hip 1, and there's my overlap for this one. So again, I'm just going to twist it You want to keep the twists fairly flat. There. And we don't want any poking out wires. So sort of nice and flat. And there we go, we've got a 25-inch wire. I like to put a little bit of florist tape just on the daisy wires. So grab, literally it's just about 10 centimetres, 15 centimetres, it doesn't matter, just a tiny little bit of the florist tape. Now florist tape, the one that we use is this paper tape, which is a nice matte finish, and you pull and stretch and it sort of gets, it sticks to itself. Grab a daisy, hold the florist tape and bring it back round on itself, and it kind of locks it, and then just point the tape at an angle down the stem, like so. And then when you get to the bottom, just pull it off. It doesn't matter if there's a bit of wire, it's all going to be in the headdress. So I'm going to quickly just go through and tape these up. I'll show you one more on camera. So just grab yourself a bit of tape, activate the sticky, hold it in place, bring it round and wrap it over itself, and then wind it down the stem on an angle. You don't want too much tape build up on these stems. In fact, I'm not even going to go all the way down on this one. You just want, it's just to get right up to that back of the daisy. So if you do see the back of it, you're not seeing a twisted wire. So I'm going to quickly run through and just do the rest of those, and then we're going to come back and start adding it to the main wire. I'm going to work out where I need to place the daisies. Now I've got 5 of them, and what I've done is measure the length that I've got, which has, mine's come out from the turn back at 55 centimeters, which will put my middle point at 27.5. So what I'm going to do is just mark 27.5 on my wire using this Sharpie. The next measurement that I want is, I don't want a daisy right at the very back, so I'm going to have 1 in the middle, then 2, and then 2. So I want to decide how far in from the back I'm going to go. Now I've decided to come in about 7 centimeters. So that will put my first daisy at 7. And then the daisy on this side will be at about 48. Then all I do is work out the middle point between this one and this one, and this one and this one, which is their increments of 10.75. So this next one will be at 17 1/4, and this one will be at 37 3/4. It's about there. And now I've got a point, you know, where I'm going to put each of my daisies. So what we'll do now is we'll start winding, as we wind the daisies on and move down with the florist tape. Once we get to the next point, then we add in the next daisy. So this is how I've worked it out. I've got my overall 55 centimeters, which makes my middle point there. Then decide how far you want to come in. And if you were having more daisies, then if you had 2 in between the front one and the ones that are at the back, then obviously you would divide that accordingly, and it just helps you work out. It doesn't have to be, you know, engineering precision, but it does get them in roughly the right place for laying them out. So we're going to grab the daisies, we're going to need the florist tape, and we're going to start wrapping things up. So I've got my daisies, and the stems of these have got a bit of florist tape on. In case anybody's wondering why there is a little daisy circle template in the middle of the screen, it's to stop the overhead camera from having a fit and auto-focusing. At least that's the plan. Okay, I've got myself a bigger piece of florist tape, and you don't have to work in big pieces. You can, this attaches to itself very nicely. So I'm going to activate the tape, and what I'm going to do is start just a little bit in, and then I'm going to go back the other way right at the very end. But to start with, I'm just going to get this locked on and start wrapping around. Let me just move that stuff out the way. I'm going to do my best to keep this rather long wire on camera. So I'm going to wind it down until I get to my first mark. So I'm going to wind right up to it. And then I'm going to bring in one of my daisies. Make sure that the back is flat. I'm going to put the centre of the daisy to that point. And then holding the daisy in place, I'm just going to give a loose wrap down the wire. Okay, then carrying on with the florist tape, I'm going to bring it behind the daisy and then carry on wrapping down to my next mark. All the way down. I've got a little bit of that wire stuck out, so I'm just going to fold that back and then encompass it with some florist tape. And you can put on a couple of layers of florist tape if you want to. So I'm at my next mark. So next daisy in position, and wrap over with the florist tape and continue, and it's basically this all the way to the end. You may find it easier to actually twist the wire whilst wrapping the tape, but it's very difficult for me to do that on camera. Okay, so I'm at the end of my first bit of tape. I'm just going to grab a bit more. And then to add a new piece of tape, just overlap ever so slightly on the previous bit, lock it over itself, and carry on down the project. Okay, I'm at my next mark. So next daisy. And then all the way down. Now this is getting a little shorter for me to work with, nearly at the other end now. So next daisy, wrap. And all of these wires that we're wrapping just go to strengthen that main core. So wrap the florist tape around. I'll run out again. Last bit of florist tape. This one is the dark green that we use. So again, overlapping the previous, lock it round on itself, and then twist it down to my final mark. Pop on the last daisy. make sure that they're all sort of facing the same way. And then wrap that down to the end. Follow on with the florist tape. And this would make a lovely little gift for, you know, maybe a flower girl as a keepsake. I'm going to the Fantasy Forest Festival at Sudley Castle later on this month, so this is going to be my headdress. Okay, so we're right down to the end. We take the florist tape and take it just past the end and then come back. You don't want that wire to poke out at the end, and just break off any excess. Last thing I'm going to do is come back to the other end and just do exactly the same thing, but it's easier to start in to a project than it is to try and wind right on the very end, I find. So okay, and then got it folded over, and again right to the end, past the end ever so slightly, and then I always double back like so. And there we have it, one daisy covered wire. This is where it gets a bit unruly. Okay, moment of truth. You're going to bend it round and overlap those two hooks just to secure it in place. And then manipulate the wire. The florist tape will still probably feel a little tacky at this point, but don't worry. Then we've got a little bit of adjustment in the back, which is great if you're planning on making these and perhaps selling them. Yeah, you need a little bit of a adjustment in the cranium. Okay, so there we have it. Get your daisies in line. You may have something round to actually manipulate that around, but for the purpose of this tutorial that'll be fine. Last thing to do is some ribbon. This is let's see, what have I got here? I've got about 90 centimeters of ribbon, I think, and I've gone for a nice sort of sage green and lemony yellow, and I've cut these the same size. Fold them in half. So my fingers are sticky from the florist tape, but fold them in half together. That one might be a bit shorter, but that's fine. And then take that centre point get the back of your circlet and bring the loop. So this is my centre. Bring the loop, pull through, And then that little bit of ribbon just hides that knot in the back. And you've got a lovely ribbon trail for cascading down the back. And then obviously to adjust it, you can just move the ribbon out of the way, adjust it, pop the ribbon back. And there you have it. One Dainty Daisy flower circlet. Okay, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial as much as I have, and I wish you all a very crafty day.